Okay, before we came on air today, I asked ChatGPT, what are the core aspects of deception? And they came up with concealment, trust exploitation, and plausibility. They came up with a few more as well, and that's pretty good. And while we do our podcast today, I'd like you to bear those factors in mind. Welcome to the Internet Seriously. I'm Lucian Taylor in Oxford.
I'm Emily Taylor, also in Oxford.
And I'm Kieran McCarthy in London.
That was a great week there, Kieran. But I'm now going to reveal that it was actually really me, Lucian Taylor. The disguise was there, but let's forget all about that. But there is a reason why we wore that, and that is because we have a very, very special guest today, the famous Kitboga. Twitch streamer, YouTuber with over 1 million followers, whose content focuses on scam baiting against phone frauds. Welcome, Kit.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here, guys.
Yeah, we just got Kieran there as Kit, and we just want to just say, this really is live, so some of it is a little bit shit, but actually, Kit, you are here, you are real, and we're very proud to have you on the show. So coming up today, a few topics, but obviously we're going to be talking to Kit about his work that he does, and obviously concealment, trust exploitation, building plausibility, the core aspects of deception in terms of fighting scams and fraud. A couple of topics that I want to raise. One is my friend Prakash. He runs a Yeti curry house in Oxford, a fantastic curry house, and a relative of his just last week has lost £41,000 to a scammer who pursued him to transfer a payment from a business account. This is not a personal account, this is a business account using what's called authorised push payments. I'd like to discuss with Kit and the team in the round, what can he do about that? But before that, Emily's going to be talking to the great Kitboga. See you in a minute. Thank you. Before I hand over, Emily, I just want to say, please follow us. If you're one of the 1 million Kitboga followers who's actually watching this now, please also subscribe to us. Let's try and get 1 million today. That would be really fantastic. But thank you. We need you and we need your support. It's great work that's happening here. Thank you. Emily, over to you with Kit.
Kitboga,
oh, by the way, your hair looks great.
Thank you. And also, Kit, I also want to talk to you afterwards about where you got your granny wig, because I felt like mine was a bit ridiculous and yours looked much more real somehow. I mean, have you got any tips for us on how to acquire those sort of the more natural look for the granny wig?
Well, I propose you've got hair and makeup, haven't you now? You've got a big outfit there.
That's funny. People have given me live tips before, because typically what happens, this actually just a few days ago, I was on with a scammer and suddenly they say something like, join this Zoom meeting, and I'm not prepared or ready for it. And suddenly I'm like, what do I have to do? And so people, when I live stream, have given me tips on like put tape over your sideburns and use foundation on top of the tape. And so I've gleaned all this knowledge from the internet.
Yeah, oh, great. And congratulations on winning the Global Anti-Scam Alliance Scam Fighter of the Year 2024. And very well deserved. And we all met at the Global Anti-Scam Summit back in, I guess it was October, November time. It was around the election. It must have been November. And you gave a fantastic talk about your work. Does the accolade of Scam Fighter of the Year, is that meaningful to you? Is that something that you're proud of?
Oh, absolutely. I think in some ways it reminds me of when I first started doing this internet thing and calling scammers. I remember telling my father that I wasn't doing my software job anymore and that I was going to be on the internet calling scammers, and he just didn't understand. But
That's
then
weird. How did he react? How did he react to this?
I think he just thought I was crazy, genuinely, and he didn't understand how could there even be any money here? How could I support my family? But then one day I got an interview and from like a big, I want to say it was like New York Times or Washington Post, something here in the U.S. And suddenly my dad's like, "Oh my gosh, you're famous." Never mind that I was on the front page of Reddit or had all these views on YouTube. And so similarly, I think for me with Gasa, it's like being, it's a bunch of my fraud fighting peers. It's a bunch of people that I look up to or work with. And so to be honored and win that award amongst a bunch of professionals fighting the same bad guys I'm fighting means a lot to me, as opposed to just random views on YouTube.
Can I just also ask, because we're sort of the other way round. We're like former entertainers who have become software engineers, and we're doing a bit of entertaining to try and sort of get back into it and make it. What software were you doing? You know, we've got geeks here who really want to know what you were doing in the background before that.
Yeah, I did a lot of like database work, so it was in an era where businesses and enterprise people had a lot of data and they didn't know how to organize it all for the internet.
Wonderful stuff. The real stuff then. You did the real stuff. You did databases.
Or you could have some great conversations with the guys here, Kit, about databases, you know, if you really want to live it up a bit.
But I also, you know, as you were unpacking some of your scams and scam baiting, there is a lot of technology in there. There's a lot of actual understanding about the client interface and what people are facing. And you were talking about almost some examples of terrible government websites that really are a field day for scammers as you're watching them interact with AnyDesk and things like that. So I can see that your interest in technology is still there. You're not waving goodbye to it.
Absolutely. I feel like a lot of the things that we do end up utilizing technology or things that I've had in the past. Like one quick example is we recently built what looks like a United States Postal Service tracking app or some kind of postal tracking application to convince scammers that we've mailed them a package, because a lot of times they ask me to mail gold or cash or something in a box. And so I say I used this third-party courier, and in order for them to see the tracking, they have to give me GPS access to their phone.
Yeah, great.
And and then we know where they are. But like we had to code all of that and use tech from my past.
Wow, we've been doing some sector analysis at the DNS Research Federation, looking at the relative occurrence of scams and fraud across different sectors. And I'm sure you won't be surprised that home delivery is right up there, way above financial sector, above, you know, things like insurance. And so those kind of home delivery scams, I know that people in the office, family members have got caught out by them and have ended up having identity theft and really impacting on their credit scores. And is that one of the most prevalent sort of scams that you're seeing, or are you seeing new trends now?
Yeah, I still deal quite a bit with scammers who want crypto or having you go to like a Bitcoin ATM machine or something like that. But I am seeing an increase in them asking for you buying things like gold or mailing something to them. There's been a handful of reports here, even recently, of someone showing up to the house with Uber or some kind of delivery service, and the person doesn't even realize that they're picking up a package full of basically fraud. This person's life savings are in the box, and they don't even.
Everything you're saying just it triggers new things. Before I hand over to Kieran for his questions for you, you mentioned like crypto. We've noticed now. I don't know if you've heard recently at the Global Signal Exchange, we've now got Google sharing their data, and they're looking to share 100 million threat signals. And obviously that's created a whole different game in terms of figuring out what's happening out there. And we're noticing stuff like Coinbase and stuff are becoming real areas where scammers are going in there with fake domain names and really luring victims using some of the big crypto brands. And I'm sure you're seeing that growth as well.
Oh, absolutely. Like anytime they can latch on to something that you trust, they're going to do it. I just this week, I was even going on Facebook and social media sites, and you can find the same thing where they'll make, official Coinbase support type usernames and social media accounts. They do the same thing for just about any sector. So there's I'm sure you guys are aware of the kind of, I call them task scams, but they're like a subgroup of pig butchering where it's like a job scam where you're doing these tasks, but then it leads into this investment scheme. And a lot of them now are using brands too. So they'll pick popular hotels or popular, like they'll say it's Netflix that you're getting a job with. So yeah, absolutely. The impostering.
We find it really prevalent everywhere, and we found it with events as well. With the CrowdStrike outage, we found Microsoft, CrowdStrike, black screen of death, fix it. Anyway, Kieran, you had some.
Well, yeah, I think we need to. We're not sharing the joy that it is watching, Kit's videos. And, some of the other people. It's the things, and I've been down wormholes to the point where I think, oh my God, how long have I been watching these things? But it's you've got scammers calling up, and then you're cutting to like footage of them and say, your name's not really Richard, is it, Rakesh? And them going, what? Who are you? Yeah. And then you've got Kit's thing is like, because of the wigs, is like pretending to be a doddery old woman and driving them absolutely up the wall. Because you're like, oh, what was that 4-2 what, darling? And getting it wrong, and then them screaming abuse down the line because you've ruined they think they're going to get £100,000 in the dollars, and they're not. So we need to share the joy and the madness of that approach, which is a lot more fun than just sort of the slightly dry fraud fighting. But a question I have for you is often, I've seen some of the videos in which you're at the receiving end of someone yelling abuse at you for quite a long time, and you laugh it off. But I do wonder, what do you do? It must take a toll. What do you do to sort of shake off the stress of being yelled at for hours?
Good. That does happen. I think over the years I've started to, like, it doesn't matter to me at all. Like they're empty threats, right? When early on, there were some scary times. I remember the first time a scammer said that they were going to, murder my family, and they said, like, I know where you are. I know you're using a Mac and all this stuff. And I was using a Mac. And this was like very early on, 8 years ago. And I remember thinking, what if they do know where I live? What if they are going to come murder my family? And I got very nervous. But as time has gone on and I realized that I'm being, safe about this, I know they're just upset and they're yelling any profanity. It's to make them feel better. So at this point, I just kind of feel joy. Like I've done a good job. if they.
But Kit, I'm really struck in the videos. How quickly the scammers get nasty and show real stress. And you're brilliant. As a former actor, I must say your characterization of your scam victims and your grannies is really kind. It's done with loads of empathy. You're not objectifying victims. You're just lovable. And but I can see that, like, the scammers, and they're often working in call centers, right? And they're often, I think, and we know that there are lots of scam centers in Asia. Do you think that it speaks to the pressure that a lot of these scammers are under? I know they are criminals perpetrating crimes on victims, but they themselves also seem to be under incredible pressure. What do you think about that?
Yeah, sometimes I think for them, they're doing volumes of calls, and sometimes I think why my crazy scenarios, let's say, have been successful is because maybe they've done 100, 200 calls this week, and not a single one of those calls got to the point where they bought a gift card or they went to the bank. A lot of the calls end up not working out. So when they see,
and then you are a dream come true, right? Because you fall for everything. Do you have any regrets about marrying the African prince?
Oh, that was one of my questions.
That was my question.
Are you divorced? No, before you answer that.
Is it a legal ceremony?
Before you answer that, we've got a lot more to talk about that. So it's time for our guilty pleasure online. Kitboga, what is your guilty pleasure online?
There is a subreddit called, I'll call it Poopy Robots, but it starts with an S. And it is just robots being really bad at their jobs. For example, like robots that are supposed to play soccer and they just miss the kick and fall over.
They're just terrible at soccer. Oh, you know what? Yeah, can I put my boast in? Because unlike Kitboga, I don't get the kind of followers and interaction that Kit gets. But last week or the week before, my daughter cut a 30-second shot of me talking about a robot. And suddenly, when you're talking about scams and fraud, that's one thing, unless you're dressing up in a wig, with shades. But when you're talking about a robot, suddenly everyone on Twitter and TikTok are going nuts about it because it's a robot, and they really love crap robots. They love robots that are really hopeless at their job or they work all night. So what is it called again? What is it? Shooping or something?
I called it poopy, but it's the S word. It's the bad word.
Oh, right, okay.
Subreddit. You came to Reddit recently.
Thank you very much. That's a good one. We'll look out for that.
I'm bookmarking that.
So I've got a kind of semi-serious question for you, Kit. One of my relatives, we think, is just on the brink of falling for a massive romance/investment scam. Thinks that they're in love, just about to go and buy a house in a different country.
In Africa, I think.
Never. Everyone's saying this is a scam, and they're completely like, no, I'm in love, this is it. I mean, and they might be, and it might be it.
Never met them.
What would you say to them to try and kind of pull them back from the brink?
Oh, man. That's like some of the hardest things that I've dealt with. You know, you just asked a minute ago, Kieran, like, about the yelling and what do I do to center myself out. Those are the sorts of situations that are more like after I deal with talking to victims or potential victims are some of the hardest, because I have met people who think that they're married and think that they have children with or like adopted children with these scammers even. Gosh, I wish I had like a one sentence to say that would be perfect. I think a lot of it is that there are people who make it you become their job, and every single day they are messaging you love stories and messages to make it seem like you're in love, but they're doing this for dozens of people, and it's their job. And I don't know if that somehow. I mean, he's
just unfortunately his mother died recently, so he's actually just inherited hundreds of thousands of euros.
Hang on, are you trying to scam Kit here?
No, we're not. No, this is actually serious.
They're just looking for investment.
Yeah, we've got a very attractive
Kit,
scheme.
You know, he's going to lose money, and we're wondering if you could help out.
Yeah, maybe if I give you some, if you could maybe transfer some funds to us. But yeah.
Well, why don't I let you connect to my computer first?
I've got another question, which was really on this sort of personal drive, and this is a rhetorical question because I kind of know this about you. You've made this public about your grandma. I just wanted to say, my mother-in-law, Emily and I married, so this is Emily's mother, talked to a business scammer for over 2 hours while we were in the house, and she was like, "Be quiet, I'm talking." This is this person, and it was like, and we're like, "What is this about? Why are you getting your credit cards out?" "I'm not getting my credit cards; they're the business credit cards." And she was reading out all this stuff to this guy for about 2 hours.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, we said, Why did you do that?" "I don't know. I kind of knew it was wrong." And we're like, "Yeah, but..." And she rang up Marks and Spencer's. I don't know if you have that in the States. Here it's a superstore and you have your card. And she was going through cancelling all the cards. And the Marks and Spencer's customer support service woman called her stupid. And my question to you is, do you think she was stupid?
No. Sometimes I get those comments on YouTube or the live streams, and I always, if I ever see it, I try to make it a point to clap back, as the kids say. I think that's just false. So many people of all ages, of all walks of life, fall for these things, and it's because they catch you at the right time, or they're able to manipulate you with certain data they know about you or your family. I don't think they were stupid at all.
Kit, what keeps you going? Because there is a darkness to this whole side, as we've been exploring, but also your stuff, like Kieran said, it's so funny, it's so entertaining. Does that keep you going? What keeps you going? What motivates you? What makes you feel hopeful amidst all this darkness and evil, really?
Yeah. Well, a lot of it is like I have kids, and I want the world to be better for them. So I think that's a big part of it. But I also see, like, in the midst of, even like after going to Gaza and hearing some of the things that are going on, or I think all of us have an inside look at just how bad fraud is in the world. But there's days where, amidst all of the, let's say, darkness of how bad it is, I feel like the only way to respond is, like, I'm not going to give up, right? I'm not going to just concede and say, well, I guess the bad guys win. And especially when I have kids, it's like, this is going to be my life's mission now, is to do the best I can.
I think we're in that as well. And I think I really do believe that the narrative, the story needs to be told, because actually it's still quite hard to get basic things like database resources. It costs a lot to actually fight scam and abuse. You're looking at since we've got the Google data, there's just a plethora of data and signals, and you need to process them all and find out this. So it needs stories like yours to keep people engaged. Wouldn't you agree, Kieran?
Yeah, I do. I was having lots of thoughts on that. I was really intrigued what you're saying about someone is there and they're looking after or falling in love with 20 people, sending them poems and all that. I wonder, you must have to get into these people's heads in order to drive them as crazy as you drive them. Do they take a certain pride, or they feel like they are doing a good job, or what's the mindset? Are they aware that they are ruining people's lives? What's going on in their heads?
Yeah, I've talked to a handful of them, and I think I've seen the range from new scammers who are concerned about what they're doing and have some ethical framework left, and I've also talked to scammers who just don't care at all. And even if they did know that they were ruining someone's life, they're not concerned about anyone's life but their own, like, just zero empathy at all. But I think, if I could, one more thing quickly, is that I think some of them believe, like, more developed countries, or I've heard them say things like, well, you're in America and, like, you have plenty of money, so they think of themselves kind of as Robin Hood as well.
Yes, and I think that I'm really interested in. Emily and I went to elite drama schools in London in our earlier days, so we really, but the big thing that
we know poverty.
We know poverty. Yes, we know about. But no, this is my real question for you, is about empathy. You're taught as an actor, if you're playing Hitler, you've got to empathise with him. You've got to understand that he feels like a victim. He's vegetarian. That and all of this. You've got to try and get inside the heads of the people that you're working with. I noticed from your background, you're an engineer, but you're bloody good at improvising. you've got to think on your feet. You don't know what they're going to say and come back with. You're like, I've forgotten my card. I can't remember this. And, you've got to really think on your feet, but you've got to occupy the character that you're playing and you're doing. Is there any performing background there? Is there any arts background there?
Yeah, not really, other than I really liked improv, and I didn't ever get formally trained, but I would go to improv shows and watch people do improv. I was shouting out things in the audience. There's also a show, Whose Line Is It Anyway? That I quite liked to watch. The other thing that I think that helps me is, having done this so many times, I usually say I know the script better than the scammer does at this point. And so that really helps, because yes, I'm doing improv, but I also have a general, I know what's going to happen, right? I know what their MO is. I know what the next page of the script is already. So it kind of helps me to be thinking about that in the moment.
I loved it when you got the scammer singing to you, and making up ridiculous songs. They were great. Was that just spur of the moment, or you thought, I'm going to get this guy to sing to me?
Probably. I mean, sometimes it's random. Other times, because I do this live a lot, there will be people in the audience, almost like an improv show, saying, "Oh, what if you got him to sing?" Or what if you did this? Some of the funniest moments for me have been people in the community suggesting something. Like one time I was telling a scammer that I was just really afraid to drive. I hadn't driven in years since the accident. And then people in chat were like, what if he sang you a song to make it easier for you to drive the car? And brilliant. Of course.
So you're actually getting cues and prompts and ideas from people in the chat. I think that's wonderful. Kieran, before your next question, we're running out of time. It's time for our Tech Room 101. Room 101. Kitboga, what of internet or technology or something vaguely connected with it, what would you like to chuck in the bin forever?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and I have maybe two thoughts. I'll give you the main one. Right now, probably would be, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but there's some AI models that they've been training recently that are essentially like, you can make any clothed image nude. And I think I would just delete that if I could right-click delete anything. I think it's going to cause immense pain and suffering and scams.
A huge problem out there and a very big topic. But before you go, number 2.
Oh, yeah, I think the second one is I've just been dealing with, it's really difficult to get websites and domains shut down. A lot of the providers, I don't know if it's they don't have the time or the resources or what it is, but we're dealing with all these scammers that I face. And then I send all of my information over to a web host or a domain provider.
Huge topic. Emily, you deal with the nude. Kieran, you deal with how easy it is to shut down domains and websites.
Well, Kit, I just wanted to say there was some legislation, I think it was either passed or proposed here last week in the UK, to make that sort of activity illegal. So rather than banning the tool itself, to make the activity illegal. Because you're right, it's really hard to think about legitimate purposes for that, but I'm sure there are some artistic ones. But the pain and suffering, I mean, you were at the Global Anti-Scam Summit with us last year, where there was an incredibly moving story about sextortion, and particularly the targeting of teenagers, some of whom had taken their own lives because of the shame of, sending an intimate image to somebody thinking that was a trusted person and it turning out to be a scammer. So, yeah, I completely agree with you. It's really awful to think about the pain and suffering on that.
And Kieran, taking down websites and domains, Kitboga says that's a pretty hard thing to do as an internet professional who's dealt with hosting, domain names, websites, and all of those parts of the internet industry. What do you think about that question?
Yeah, well, this is kind of our wheelhouse, isn't it? It's been a very long and ongoing problem. I think you should flag that. You have a big audience. I think you should piece together in your entertaining way if it's obvious and provable that somebody is using a particular domain to scam people, then the company that is able to take it down should obviously take it down. So I think we are trying to not put a spotlight on it, but certainly say to people, look, you know that this is scammy. You know that this should come down. And I understand the arguments that the industry has, which is that we can't expect us to take down everything just because we get a report. But when it is super clear, then it's got to come down. You're not being a good citizen if you don't do it. So I would encourage you to use the platform you have to do exactly that.
Thank you. I have a few times. I almost hate doing it, but I don't like. I prefer to keep it, to some emails or DMs. Right. I don't like drama, but there has been a few times that I've gone on social media and said, like, what gives? Why won't you shut this down? I've reported it. I've called you a dozen times, and then suddenly they shut the website down because
but it's really interesting.
It doesn't always work though.
Oh, Kit, because we work across different industry verticals, and we see like totally different practices and expectations. So here in the UK, the internet service providers and the banks have got really long-standing cooperation, and they will react within fractions of a second if they're alerted to problems, whereas the domain industry is still in its sort of, hey, it's not our problem
teenage world
versus okay, well, we might do something within 72 hours. So there's a huge disparity in the acceptable reaction times, even if the party is actually playing ball. And thanks for mentioning that.
We are running out of time, sadly, but it's been super having you on our podcast. But we've got one other topic that we need to cover, and I don't mind one-word answers here, and I'll probably volunteer my first. My friend Prakash, who runs the wonderful Yeti Curry House in Oxford, we visit him every day, and he visited us every day when it was COVID. He's fantastic, but his relative has just lost £47,000 to a scammer because it's from a business account, and he did what's called an authorized push payment. So he was scammed. He was convinced he was settling some big business contract bill, and so he's voluntarily been involved in pushing the money out of his account. Prakash wrote to me, I didn't know you were in scams and fraud and doing all of this. What can my cousin do about it? I haven't told him yet, but my answer is nothing at all. I wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
Ooh, and in terms of getting the money back, or specifically getting the money back, I think that's so hard. It's one of the most disheartening parts of my job, is telling people every day that I can't get your money back. Preventing it again, I think there's ways, or like perhaps going after that scam. Like, we could go after that scammer together and now get their bank accounts and their information and make it so no one else can fall for that. But getting the money back, that's so
I mean, there
hard.
are some movements in the UK, aren't
there,
there, Emily, for consumers? There's the payment systems regulator, which is reimbursing you up to £85,000 if you are a consumer, but it's hitting business. And these are small businesses.
Sometimes small businesses and consumers are not so different in terms of their resources, and often they are a one-man band. So the protection, you're right to mention the protections for consumers, they won't replace your house if you happen to be giving away on that scale, but for more manageable losses. But for small businesses, it's really, I was just listening to this and thinking, I haven't got a hopeful story, but I like the idea of taking the story on, Kit, and scamming them back.
So
maybe we could do that.
One last thing that we always have is the comment of the week. Do we have a comment of the week? That's from last week.
We certainly do.
This is our voice of God. This is Charlie, our voice of God.
Hello. Hello, and welcome to the show, Kitboga.
Thank you.
So we have 2 comments this week. We've got Martin on TikTok Live. We're streaming live on TikTok, guys. Asks, this is to you, Kitboga, how do you think AI will impact scammers and scam baiters?
Great.
And that's Martin, is it?
That's Martin
That's
on
a great
TikTok
question
Live.
from Martin.
Thank you, Martin.
Kit, do you want to respond to Martin's question?
Sure. I mean, from the scam baiter side, like, we've been, I just announced yesterday, actually, that I am dispatching an army of clones So I've been working on training off of all of my data and my voices. We have bots that can now call scammers and waste their time. So I think that's going to be huge. And then on the scammer side, I think it's what I was referring to, things like the undressing types of models, the deep fake models, voice cloning. Like we're already seeing that happen. Especially you guys earlier, we were talking about the romance scams. I see people every week now who think they're actually talking to Brad Pitt because they see the face and they see hear the voice. So I think that's what scammers are going to be doing.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
That's a wonderful answer.
What's the next question?
We've got...
say, just talking of voices, do you have your voice changing software there? Can you give us an example of the voice changing?
Yeah, I can do, well, some of it I just do like this. Like I just change my voice anyway. But
I can pitch shift it higher and then maybe sound a little bit more like a grandmother.
But I remember the first time some of it is just I do an accent or something.
Yeah.
And I remember my father saying, "What voice changer do you use to do the accents?"
It's acting. It's called acting and dialect. What's the next comment of the week, Charlie?
Next comment of the week. This is in response to Labour wanting to have a UK Silicon Valley. Oh, yeah. This is Howard Parkin 7382 on YouTube. Of course it will not be another Silicon Valley, not when there are no incentives to bring big money and innovation to the country. A train line alone is worthless. This isn't the Wild West. We aren't in the 1800s.
Howard. Howard, well, Kieran, you really... You took that same point of view, didn't you, as Howard? Like, this
I'm
is
with
so
Howard.
lame.
You can't just say we're gonna have a Silicon Valley and then there be a Silicon Valley. I lived there for years. There is a whole complex ecosystem, and it requires a lot of thought and a lot of the right people and a lot of investment. You can't just have a politician say it out loud and it magically happens.
Well, do you think a train line is at least better than a roundabout? Alas, the UK ambition to compete with Silicon Valley was to create a roundabout of innovation.
Kit, do you like the UK? Do you ever come here?
I have never been, but I will be, I think, 2 or 3 times this year. So
Ooh, come and see us.
Come and see us in Oxford.
We'd love to see you.
Yeah, come and join us live on the show or just for a beer. It would be great to see you for the second time in a year. It's been lovely talking to you today. So we've run out of time. This whole episode we've devoted to Kitboga, who's doing such fantastic work, a real champion of the stuff we're trying to do in defeating scams and abuse. Thank you for giving up some of your morning and your own work. We love what you're doing. We'll keep following you. And hey, let's keep swapping notes, because if you're franchising the Kitboga, if you're getting assets and threat signals that would be useful for all of our community, public safety, law enforcement, and please keep in touch. We'll keep in touch with you. We'll keep pestering you. And if you could ask your 1 million fans to all subscribe to us as well, we'll then do likewise. Take care, Kit. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.